This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Today is Wednesday, so you know what that means. That means we're going to be doing a little bit of meditation, a little bit of deeper thought, talking about recovery-related issues, just what we think about them,
Sounds good to me, man. With that being said, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing really good, actually. Everything's kind of smoothing out a little bit with the work schedule and with the busyness of the podcast and the responsibilities and all that fun adult stuff. It's kind of starting to smooth out and finding that balance, that routine that I've been looking for more and more. So it's kind of starting to come together. How about yourself?
Pretty good, man. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I was editing like all last night. But everything, just like you said, is smoothing out slowly but surely. It's just a matter of like, okay, keep on top of it, keep it together. Because I think that's a lot of what later portions of recovery is about. Is I don't ever, let me clarify, when I say keep it together, I don't ever feel like, oh gosh, I'm going to relapse. It's like, no. Stay on schedule, wake up, do what I need to do, make myself do it. Don't think that it's like, well, I can just slack off a little bit in this area. It's like, no, the house of cards will come falling down. I got to keep on top of it. So it's a lot of where I've been lately. We have had nothing but family over at my house for the last 3 weeks. Well, actually for the last month and a half, leading up into my son's birth, Jonah, all the way into like 2 hours ago for him. But we're finally through it. Love all of my family, love all of my extended family, love all of my wife's family. It was a good time. It was just, we now have, it's like, okay, let's get them on a schedule. Let's get everything going. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, they might be listening. So, you gotta be nice.
Hi guys.
But yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I really like what you just said there about holding that responsibility, like getting up and doing the right thing. Because the first part you were talking about, like there is that really, really tempting thing. I have a tendency to do this sometimes. Like I get up, my alarm goes off at 5:30 and then I'm like, well, I can snooze a few times, and I'm like, I can work out later, or like I can do my devotional time later, whatever it might be. Never does it fail. Whenever I say that, I don't end up doing that thing. And it's
right.
It's just like, it's,
you end up in a world of hurt too, man. It's so rough where it's just like, and then, one card goes and then it's just the entire house falls on top of it. And it's just so difficult. My cat's freaking out right now. if for those of you might be able to hear, my cat's meowing in the background. Yeah. But no, it's been good. I'm excited. I'm motivated more than ever to just get things done, to get things squared away. The podcast is really starting to take off. It's really starting to get a lot of tread, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, ministry things are starting to pop off, and really, there's just, and I don't know about you, I just want to be thankful and talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on with us, where it's, for a long time, you and I have sat down, excuse me, you and I have sat down and, we've talked about cool concepts. We've talked about doing things, but all of a sudden, I don't know what it is, but since we've started this podcast, like it just seems like this is the direction. Mm-hmm. Like it feels like we're producing something where it's, instead of letting kind of the world happen to us, where it's like, we got to go to work and we got to work with, our recoveries and do this thing. It's like, no, we got to produce. There's always like, we're producing audio. Now we're going to start talking about producing videos. Now we're going to start produce. So it's like all this media stuff where it's really just really, really exciting to be about and get on top of. So keep talking. I want to make sure my cat didn't just pause us.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I feel like it's important. So since we're talking to a recovery base right now, when we're going to talk about this where we're at, being grateful for where we're at, I want to take a quick moment. We did an interview together. I interviewed you, you interviewed me. And we talked about a little bit of where we were at and what brought us into recovery. And I just want to reiterate that both of us, you 6 years ago, I believe it's 6 years, right?
A little bit over. Yep.
Yeah. So you a little over 6 years ago, me a little over 2.5 years ago, we're both miserable.
Yep.
We were both stuck in the pit of addiction. And I think right now, yeah, let's talk about where we're at right now, because this is a hope shot. You know what I'm saying? Through doing this thing called recovery, we're now this. If I would have looked at myself 2.5 years ago and be like, Hunter, you're going to have a recovery podcast. You're going to be a recovery coach trainer. You're going to be working with sober living houses. You're going to be on Zoom calls with judges and probation agents and stuff and not be arrested. And I would have been like, you're funny. You know, it's like, let's talk about it.
So, I mean, well, talking about it, like so just breaking down our schedule for this next couple of weeks, which is just like crazy. So let me preface this. A lot of times I found that when we're having these conversations on podcasts, it's like that if the mic wasn't here, we'd be saying the same exact thing. We'd be having these discussions. This isn't, for those of you who might be listening, this isn't artificially manufactured conversation. Like this is, but before we even turned on these mics, while we were setting up for the better portion of like the last 35, 40 minutes, we've been talking about different things. We've been talking about religious things, sermons. We've been talking about recovery. We've been talking about what's going on in our personal lives, what's going on. Starting a blog. Right. Yeah. So, talking about filming, starting a blog, starting a book, all these different things. And it's, at least for me, it is what gets me up in the morning. It's like, this is the work. This is, for you to have told me that I get to do this with my life, 6 years ago, I mean, even a couple of years ago, I would have laughed, because I thought that all it was for me was I was going to wake up, I was going to go to work, and then I was going to be done. And I maybe would have a girlfriend, and maybe I'd be living in an apartment. It's like, now I have my own house. I have a wife. I have a beautiful son who is just perfect in every single way. I have a really good set of friends. I've got you. I don't know what that means for anybody, but there's friends, and then there's Hunter.
I'm pretty cool though.
Yeah, the Huntsman. I'm cool guy club. No, but I have all these things, and then on top of that, I don't know what it was, and I don't know if it's like this for you. What I do know for me is 3 or 4 months ago, really more than that, 7 or 8 months ago, we started talking about a podcast, and then 3 or 4 months ago, all of a sudden it was just like, well, we're either going to do this thing or we're not.
Actually, correction. That's not what happened. What happened was he came up to me and said, what do you got going on next week? We're recording podcast. I think it was like the week before, we're recording for a podcast that we're going to be doing. And I'm like, oh, all right. When we had talked about it prior, but it was like all of a sudden.
Well, for me, I had been for other than Hunter, there was a lot of people around me where I was like, I want to start a podcast. I want to start this. I want to start that. And a lot of people, I had general support, but it was never like, yeah, do it. What do you do? There was never conversation. And it's something that I've noticed, that people like to talk about themselves. They seldom like to talk about other things with other people. And for those of you who are in recovery, who are listening to this, do yourself a favor. Start listening to people. Stop talking. Stop. I know we're in a podcast and we're talking, and that's what we're doing right now, but I know a good portion of our lives, man, you and me are like, we're not talking, we're listening, because a listening ear, somebody who is actually going to be, being that living mirror and giving you receptive feedback, is invaluable. And I found that in the midst of this podcast, that I saw that more than anything else, because I had support of people, but there was no overwhelming support. There was nobody saying, yeah, absolutely do it. There was none of that. It was like, I have to pull myself up here. I have to do the research. I got to see what it's going to take. And through many sleepless nights and reading through material and reading through websites and watching YouTube videos and watching, learning how to do all this stuff, teaching us how to actually produce, how to do audio mixing, how to do video mixing, how to cut all this type of stuff together, what good cameras are, what good mics are there, all this stuff. And then we got to produce material, and then we got to have, fill hour-long blocks, and we got to go and seek the people that are going to want to be the professionals that talk on this or do the interviews. And it's all of a sudden I'm waking up, and over the last couple of weeks, we've talked extensively about incremental change over time. And then eventually you get to look back, and I'm at that moment where it's like, I'm looking back even at this podcast, and it's like, whoa, what is happening. We're interviewing people. We're talking about addiction. We're producing content. I mean, if for those of you who are listening, I believe we're on like the 23rd episode of the podcast at this point. We've almost produced a day full of content, literally almost 24 hours worth of content. Is that not insane to you? Like, does that not sit like, is that not crazy? Like, we've talked to people for almost an entire day, and it just baffles my mind. And that's where I'm at least.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things in there that you just said that I really resonated with. I really like what you said about people are kind of stop and listen. I want to touch on that, even though that was kind of a side point, but that really like stop and listen to what's going on around you. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're talking, especially professionals in this field, it's invaluable. Like if I'm talking to you and you're not listening to me, I don't want to talk to you, you know? So it's like, stop and listen. You know what I'm saying? If someone's talking to me, I'm going to listen to them so I can give them good feedback. I just thought that was really important what you were saying there. But yeah, I mean, where I'm kind of at with this podcast is giving me more of a sense of purpose.
That's a perfect, I think you just hit it. Perfect word, purpose.
Mm-hmm. I mean, really, I saw this, it was a Facebook post, you know, but it was a good meme. It said, don't go to work for 8 hours and then come home and work nothing for no time for yourself. You're not tired. You're just unmotivated. And I was like, whoo, you know, and like, this is kind of part. Yeah, I know. This is kind of part of my work. Kind of, not really. I record a lot on off hours. You know, I record a lot on like weekends and stuff like that. And I'm cool with that because this is something that I'm like motivated to do. It's giving me like a sense of purpose, you know? And like I have purpose anyways, but it's giving me a new purpose to pursue. And I really enjoy that. Like I wake up and I'm like, I'm excited to come over here and record, you know? Some days, I mean, I'm excited to go to work, but like, I'm not always excited to go to work. I have not found a single day where I've recorded podcasts where it hasn't been fun.
Where we're not having interesting conversation. And then not only that, it's like the creative juices. It's like the law of the universe, you know, the law of gravity. And I've talked about this before. If something has a lot of mass, it will gain more mass. It will have more gravity, which means it will have more pull. And I think this podcast was the beginning of something like that, because
I thought you were going to say what goes up must come down when you said law of gravity.
Yeah.
I'm like, pretty sure that's how that works.
Yeah. I'm fairly sure. No, but that's what's happened with this podcast, at least I guess in my mentality and my perspective. We started this from scratch, completely from scratch. Had no idea how to do audio equipment, didn't know what good audio equipment to use, didn't know what video to use. And we're still learning. That's a big portion of this. We're still learning. But over time, because this wasn't like I scrambled and threw this together in a day. It was like, no, you know, weeks and months of preparation and looking. And I mean, everything on the table right now, barring the computer, costs less than like $150. Right. Like so we're not, don't think that we're doing this on streamlined equipment. Like we were bargain shopping hardcore, and some of this equipment is borrowed. So I'm very fortunate for having those conversations with the people that we did. But because of this podcast, it has opened my perspective. And I know we've had probably one conversation a day, if not every other day, of what's next. Because it's like the podcast, no, the podcast is going, it's going to stay, and we're going to keep on going. But it's like, what's next? Like this thing has now been created, but it's shown us an ability that I don't think I really recognize on myself, which is creating completely organically. What else can we create?
I love what you just said. So we were just talking, like we said, we were talking about the book, we were talking about the blog, you know, you were talking about a book a couple weeks back. We kind of had a discussion about it. So like for me, this has opened up, like you said, a whole new realm of ability within myself. You know, it showed me like I can create something. You know, before it's been like, I've wanted to start a blog for a long time. I thought about this back when I was like in Endeavor House. So early recovery. I thought about writing that book while I was in Endeavor House, early recovery. And I never followed through with it because I was like, well, no one wants to read what I have to write, you know? And then through doing this, I mean, I don't want this to sound prideful in any way, but through doing this, I found like people have said, I love your podcast. Like, it's great to listen to you guys. So it's shown an ability. Like I do have something to give out there. Yeah, it's another experience.
Something to offer.
Right.
Yes, man. And I could not agree more of we're at this weird place. Cause I don't know. I'd be happy if it stays like this. Great. If we got, you know, a couple of viewers or a couple listeners a week, great. But, you know, both you and I, like, once again, not to sound prideful, but like, we're looking at the analytics for this stuff and we're like, what is happening right now? Why is this getting tread? Why are there so many people listening to it? What is happening right now?
Mhm.
And it's profound to me. It's weird and kind of bizarre to me. But at the same time, it's like, this is really, really cool. I like that. I've been a fairly confident person all my life, but to have this moment of something that you've had a serious hand in, that you had, the idea for, and you just went out and said, I'm going to do it come heck or high water. I'm going to do this thing. Now that I've done it, it's like, like you said, it's unlocked a part of my brain that I wasn't utilizing before. It's unlocked something that said, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
Like, make it happen. Barring, it's not illegal or flying.
Well, you can still do it.
I mean, you can still do
illegal,
it.
You can still do it. I'm just saying.
But it is at a point where it's like, you can do more than you are giving yourself credit for. And I guess it's because that's a message that we preach to our recoveries. That's a message that we teach our recoveries. It's a message that we help our recoveries try to walk through. But I guess it never really resonated for me until kind of this moment, because I was looking I have a lot of obligations, and I like these obligations, and I get involved in ministry, and I get involved in business, and I get involved in these things because I want to feel like I'm doing something and being a part of something. But then those things end up producing obligations. But then this comes along and it's like, this doesn't necessarily feel like an obligation. It feels like, oh, let's make it happen. Like,
Right.
energy. I'll stop talking on that, but
No, I think it was absolutely great. It's just, I feel like this is very applicable for everyone listening right now too. I mean, with this kind of proof, like, if you get into recovery, if you do the right things, if you walk the right path, if you take on your responsibilities, you walk it out, and then you're willing to get uncomfortable out of that. Because for me, I was very comfortable. I was uncomfortable when I first started my job with you guys. Obviously, like, I was learning all new things. I was getting into a new field. I was working as a retail person before I got into be a peer recovery coach. Big change. I grew a lot through that, but then I grew into comfortability. I've worked for you guys for about, I don't know, a year and a half now. So I grew into some comfortability there. After about 6 months in, I felt like I kind of had it. And then through little bits, I would keep getting information and keep pulling stuff a little bit. But this, like, was uncomfortable for me at first. I'm like, I was there. Our first thing we recorded was my interview. And I was very uncomfortable there, like the first 2 minutes. And then I got pretty comfortable. But then this whole thing, like, people listening to me, people hearing what we're saying, talking about recovery, it's uncomfortable. But I've grown so much through doing this. So if there's anything you guys can take out of this, however long conversation we just had about this podcast stuff, and I'm sure we're going to talk some more about it, but when we get uncomfortable, it not only helps us grow, but it unlocks, like you said, new parts of our brain, that part that we never knew we had. And it's a cool experience to see, like, when we challenge ourselves, when we walk into something we're not familiar with, just the beautiful things that can be there. It's like the biggest risk is not risking anything. I love that quote.
Yes. And here's the thing. I think it bears out through both of our lives because, I don't think for those of you who might be watching on YouTube, Lifeboat Addiction Recovery Services, if you're looking for us on YouTube, but we have both struggled in our lives with depression. Sometimes we both struggled in our lives with our weight and eating. And it's like, all of a sudden I've noticed in myself, and I certainly have noticed in you over the last couple of weeks, what are we doing? Eating better, working out, doing, and it's like, whoa, what happened? And I guess it's ripping off the shackles of society. I guess that's the best thing that I can say. And I don't mean that in a political statement by any means. I mean, like, we are producing something that is our opinion, that is our opinion. It's not like I'm going to tell you what it says in a book. I'm not going to tell you or parrot what I heard on the news. I'm going to tell you what I think. And then I'm going to take an even bolder step and I'm going to put it out there for billions, not just a few people, but billions, literally. I just subscribed to iTunes. Podcasting alone is over 2 billion people have access to it, to the iTunes store. So you're talking about billions of people can now have access to my opinion. That's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It feels strange, doesn't it? It's like, oh, I don't know about that, but it is a cool experience. I don't know.
But there is that level of, like, how much accountability do I have? Because I don't know about you, but that's a safeguard that I have in my mind consistently. And I think that's important for our recoveries that might be listening to understand. you don't have to have your opinion known all the time. I'll say it again for the people in the back. Your opinion sometimes does not matter. And you believing that you need to share your opinion because for some reason the void of space in the room that isn't being filled by your voice is causing you to have extreme bouts of anxiety. It's okay. Sit in that tension. It's okay to be quiet. And I can tell you, certainly myself, there has been so many times, especially over the last couple of weeks, when I've had all different types of family members that I've had to deal with over the birth of my son. You have to have a place where it's like, is it just better left unsaid? Like, what do you, because I think about a move and a half ahead sometimes, where it's like, if I say this, how irreparably will it damage a relationship? How horribly will it cause, my very near future to pan out? And then I shut my mouth.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you to a degree. I think this
Sure.
is something you and me might disagree on a little bit, is if I have something that I feel like needs to be said, if I'm feeling like I need to say something or need to put my opinion into something, especially, I guess, if someone's asking my opinion or I see someone acting unfairly, I will say it, but I will say it in a proper manner.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Let me preface, because I think you just hit it there. If I see injustice, if I see things that I like, that it's like this, I strongly disagree with it. And my disagreement is based in like either knowing more of the whole pie, because maybe the opinion that the individual is sharing isn't formulated. But I'm talking about it like, if somebody politically disagrees with me, I'm kind of at the point, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather have you in my life and you to be present than for us to disagree about politics and feel it necessary to be ripped away from each other. And then anybody that's listening right now saying like, well, if somebody really feels that way and they're willing to do that, it's like, take a look in the mirror, take a look at, because if you're just as guilty in that fight if somebody is like that, for you sharing what you may feel is proper or improper, that they are just as guilty as them feeling that way.
Right. I'll say when I'm thinking about sharing my opinions on things of that nature. So there's a few times where I really don't care to say anything. One of those is when the person who's doing the thing that I have an opinion on, even if I see someone doing something, I'm like, that is really stupid. If it was a client, I would tell him exactly why I think it's stupid. But if it is someone who it doesn't care about my opinion, is not there to hear my opinion, has no interest in hearing it, I might try to have a conversation with him, maybe, but I'm probably not going to talk to him because he doesn't want to hear what I have to say. And I respect that, do what you walk it out, see what can happen, politics thing, man. If there's something so severe, and this is my advice to everybody, I probably might get some heat for this, I don't really care. If there's something that I do not like about someone's politics, I guess I would say
ideological bent.
Yeah. I mean, really, if there's something that is so just against the grain for me, I just won't talk to that person. If it really comes down to that, if it's something that's so irreparable, I've never ran across this, but if it's so irreparable that I cannot or I don't know if I'm using the right word, but
grasp it.
Yeah. If I really just can't get on board with it and I know it's going to be a problem and I'm really just cannot get on the same, even understand where they're coming from, which very rarely happens, I'll just leave them alone. I'll leave it unsaid, leave that situation alone. And I know my beliefs. If someone's talking about the political beliefs and I disagree with them, and this doesn't just go for political, but their recovery beliefs, their life beliefs, they're any of those things, like their scheduling, stuff like that. That's interesting. That's my favorite thing to say. That's interesting. Like, that's something to think about, it's like, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not agreeing with you because you're wrong. But I'm not, but I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not going to argue with you. It's your life. It's your thoughts. It's your opinion.
So I want to wrap this into early recovery, because I do think we've maybe uncovered something here that isn't often talked about a lot, because I think people are afraid to have this conversation. And I would encourage us, let's not, let's be a little bold here.
Controversy.
I am uncomfortable with early recoveries taking unbelievably strong political stances. I am uncomfortable with early recoveries making politics the forefront of their perspective.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because it is taking it is taking away from them, because politics is bubblegum for the masses. That's the reality for us is everybody. I can walk into a barbershop, I can walk into a mall, I can walk into anywhere in the country and say, hey, I believe this. And there will be people that agree. There will be people that disagree. There'll be people that get angry, excited, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I think in early recovery, you have to be very cautious about like, I want to solely talk about my political beliefs, or I'm not going to be around people that don't share my political beliefs, because it's like in early recovery, you should be focusing about recovery. I don't know. That might just be my own opinion, but
I will agree with you pretty much wholeheartedly on that. So there's a couple things. One, if you want to be around somebody for your politics, just get along with people, bro. You know what I'm saying? Stop being so
be a
divided.
good person.
Yeah, just love each other, you know? Like, don't be mean, don't be rude, be nice to everybody, you know? And you'll get a lot further in life. That's my opinion.
That's true. That's actually scientifically borne out. It's called agreeableness, and it's one of the big 5 personality traits. And the truth is, people who have a significant amount of agreeableness as measured by the big 5 traits, those individuals tend to have much healthier relationships and be more successful in their relationships.
And
but
that's why I'm the most popular person in Lansing with my 5 friends.
Science.
Yes. But no, I mean, so there's that piece of it, right? So don't get in arguments. I mean, don't look for reasons for strife, especially in early recovery. Don't look for reasons to grow resentments against other people. Super dangerous. You're trying to get rid of resentments, not make new ones. Point 1. Point 2, looking to outside things, no matter what it is, politics, celebrities, I don't care, sports. Looking to those things in early recovery is extreme. And like, I'm not saying you can watch football, you can watch the news. If you like Fox News, watch Fox News. If you like CNN, watch CNN. I don't care. But do not make that what you're for, like you said, the forefront of your mind, because you're taking it. This is time to look inwardly. This is time to look at myself and say, there's a lot of broken stuff inside me. And what am I going to get? How am I going to get that out? You know, instead of even like we see it on a smaller level, like I look at Christian, I say, man, Christian's got a lot of broken stuff going on, because I don't want to look at my own stuff.
Facts.
Yeah. In case you didn't know. But no, I mean, it's really like looking at someone else, looking at anything else outside is extremely bad in early recovery. It's so easy, and it's really tempting to do because it's easier than looking at myself, but it's extremely dangerous. It takes away.
Yeah. And I've had the conversation before, and I know we've talked about it, but I've had participants call me, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, but I've had recoveries call me who have a lot of chaos in their life, and their life is in complete, shambles. They're living under a bridge. They have no close relationships. The people that, they would consider their closest loved ones won't even accept a phone call from them. And then they want to call me and talk about how Donald Trump, or they want to talk about you see what's happening on the Senate floor. It's just like, first off, you clearly are paying closer attention to politics than I am. So that's number 1. But number 2, why are we worrying about this when you don't have a place to sleep tonight? Right. Why are we worrying about this when, you've relapsed and you've had your kids taken away from you and all this other stuff? Like, there are more important things in early recovery to focus on than what is going on in this political spheres. And once again, that might just be my opinion, but it's something that I've seen echoed throughout, where it's like people who have such a strong ideological or political bent in early recovery tend to be fairly unsuccessful because they are not focusing on the right things. They're not focusing on themselves. They're not focusing on what's in front of them. They instead are focusing on like, I'm going to watch CNN for 6 hours today. It's
That's
like,
unhealthy.
Did you apply for a job? Like, was in your plan? No, but did you know the president? It's like, I'm going to stop you there. Like,
Right.
What are we doing?
Yeah. And I'll say there is a time where outside distraction, and I do want to touch on this just a touch on the touch there.
Just a dab.
But like there is a point where distraction is good in the recovery, like early recovery. And I'll say that's when like the emotions become overwhelming or the drug cravings are overwhelming. It's called distraction techniques, or there's grounding techniques, things like that. But just a way to
that's that seeking safety talking right there.
Bam. But a way to distract yourself from the overwhelming emotions at the time to keep yourself safe momentarily. But like, that's what we're not talking about, like the momentary distractions that we have from real life. Like I need those still. Yes. I don't have times where the drug cravings are overwhelming. I haven't had that in years. Probably like, I think 6 months in is when I almost relapsed. That was probably the last time I had like intense drug craving. And then we're looking at like, I guess like those short-term things, it's exactly that. It's short-term. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the really long-term, like every day I want to focus on something else because it's too painful to look inward. I feel like there's a big there's a difference there. You know?
Yes. And it's important that you find that difference. I think the best way to find that difference is with the help of external voices, because when recoveries do want to come at me with early recoveries in particular, when they do want to come at me with political jargon or whatever, it's just like, what are we doing? Why are we focusing on that? If it's somebody in later recovery and they want to talk about a movie or sports, it's like, I'll humor them. You know, I may know very little about what's happening in the European League for soccer, or I'm sorry, football, as a European football. But I'll humor them. I'll talk to them. I'll have a conversation. I'll have them educate me. I know a couple of, the world famous, Ronaldinho and a couple of the big soccer players. Other than that, European football players. But yeah, I do think that there is a place for distraction.
Right. Yeah, there is a degree. And then I like what you said there, in longer term recovery, I feel like it becomes more prone at that point. Like we start to get more into the outside of having opinions on outside issues. And I feel like that's okay.
Yes.
I have a political stance, I'm not very like passionate and super vocal about my political stance, but I have one. I like sports sometimes, occasionally, from time to time, maybe depends. But, I do like sports sometimes. I like watching movies sometimes. I like to play video games sometimes. And those distractions are okay for me. But in early recovery, I mean, this is something I'm really grateful to Endeavor House for, is like, I wasn't allowed to watch TV except for, I think it was like we were allowed to watch the news in the evening. And then during the weekends, we could like have movies or something like that planned. And that gave me so much time. The first 2 months I wasn't able to work. That gave me so much time to look inwardly, to like get my life sorted out to a degree to where I was a functional human being, and then like through the last year, I worked 40 hours a week. I went to programming. And when I wasn't at work, I was doing exactly that. I was looking inwardly. I was still examining myself. I still do that now. There are days where I don't have to go to work, where I just kind of chill at home, and I might look at like what's going on in my life. And I don't just stop there. Right. So I'm saying, what's going on in my life right now? What do I need to change? What's still broken? How do I walk that out?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's an ever ongoing process that you have to live in those things that, I know for both of us, and in particular me, I have to constantly be reevaluating. I got to figure out where I'm at. I mean, and I'm fortunate enough, I have kind of that release valve of my wife that I can have these conversations with her and like say, look, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm feeling. Is that resonating? Oh, sorry. There's a fire truck going by, but I tell her, these are the things that my thoughts are. Am I right? Can you have a conversation with, am I in the wrong here? And I'm openly and receptive. I'm open and receptive to, am I wrong or right? I mean, we just had this conversation a little while ago about a sermon that was preached. And it was just kind of like, did it come off in a specific way? Did it not come off in a specific way? Somebody approached me and they felt this way and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't meant to be derogatory or frustrating to anybody, but it just, there was a weird chord for me where it's like, I'm confused. I don't know. So my first tool that I utilized, because I preached the sermon, my first tool that I utilized was reach out to my wife, reach out to my friends and trusted people that I allowed to speak into my life and say, would you humor me and listen to this? Then come back to me and tell me what you think so I can have some receptive feedback, because the feedback that I've got thus far, it's not resonating with me, but I'm willing to receive it if more than one person has the same feedback. Because at that point, then it's like, I'm missing something. If one person says that, it's like, well, and it doesn't land, that has the feeling of, well, this person is projecting. If two people say it, then you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of a happening right now. There's something going on here.
There's something afoot.
Like two people have pointed this out.
There's
do I need to start
things afoot at the Circle K?
At the Circle K. Oh man. Bill
It's your fault for showing me that movie.
Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Adventure. But if three people say something at that point, it's like, I'm missing something. This is a pattern. Like there's something here. Bill and Ted's Most Excellent Adventure was a most excellent movie, by the way.
Excellent. So on that point, so a couple things you said there. So the first one being constant reevaluation. If there's not constant reevaluation, it's not that there's no problems, it's that you have stopped finding problems. So you stop looking for problems, I should say, because there's always something that can use change in a life. I've never seen anyone live a life that I'm like, that person's perfect. they don't have to change anything. It's not reality. I've never been to that point. I've never seen you get to that point. I've never seen anybody I know get to that point. And that's awesome. Because then what else are we doing? You know what I'm saying? If we're not constantly growing, what is there?
What do they say? Perfection is boring.
I don't know. I've never heard that. I know I've heard progress, not perfection, which is, I don't know.
Well, I think perfection, depending on what your perspective is, it's I don't remember who said it, but it was back in the 50s and 60s when they started to talk about utopia, and author basically penned and said, like, utopia is boring because when everything is solved, man will create problems for themselves. Because when everything, and I think that thought resonates out so hard inside of recovery of when everything starts to get solved in front of you, and the external problems are solved and they're being taken care of and your bills are being paid, there's only one thing left to do, which is let's sort the internal problems out. Right. And when the internal problems start to come out, it's like, oh, nightmares. Like,
yeah. And then the second thing you said there too was your the external voices. We talked about that so much. And I think you put a really important key. One, trust in individuals that you let speak into your life. I think we talked about that briefly. That like I have a selected group of people. I've had people, not very often, because I don't really surround myself with negative people in my recovery. I never really have. But when I was like living at Endeavor House, I was forced to be around 16 guys, not all of them I got along with. And
oh yeah, I know that to be true.
Yeah. You were my mentor. You heard about it. But like there were people who spoke in my life that I'm like, that's not true. And I know that's not true because I have a self-identity, and I've heard it from you and you alone. And other people have said that, not that you're wrong, but the exact opposite about me.
Well, let me pause right there. See, can you break apart for me? Because I think it's very important for the listeners in recoveries in particular, who are in early recovery, to understand this mechanic, which is, what does it mean when an external voice is resonating with you versus what does it mean when an external voice is not resonating with you? When somebody says something to you and you're not feeling that, or versus you're feeling that, what does that mean to you?
So I'll say what's the name of that rooster?
I know who you're talking about.
No, it's not Huckleberry Finn. That's definitely not right.
Oh my!
It's the guy. It's someone off of Looney Tunes. You guys know who I'm talking about.
I said.
Foghorn Leghorn.
Foghorn Leghorn. Yeah. Way to pull it out of the hat, Hunter, my man.
But anyways, back to the recovery based things.
Yeah.
So when I am looking at myself and I do something wrong, I'm usually aware that I did something wrong. I'll start with that because I think that's going to plug in here in a second. So when somebody comes up to me and says, like, let's say, I've heard this one a few times, like, you're an inconsiderate person, or you're self-centered, or you're a narcissist. And I know in myself, I mean, I'm not a narcissist. I'm not an inconsiderate person. I do think about other people, and I'm really considerate of what other people what effects might be on other people since I've gotten into sobriety. Before I was in recovery, 100%. And I've had people tell me that I'm a very considerate person, that I do care about other people. I look out to other people. I like to help people. And that I know that's true. There are times where I act inconsiderately. There are times when I act narcissistically. And when I do those things, I'm aware of them. So if somebody says at that point in time, I'm aware that I just did that. And it does resonate because I'm like, yeah, I was being inconsiderate. I was being rude, and you're right. And I'm sorry, versus when somebody is projecting outwardly. And what you meant by that when you said that is like, somebody's just coming at me because they have some of their own stuff going on. They don't
day, or they see you as, a piece of meat that they're able to just devour because they want to, upset somebody around them.
Right. And I mean, really, that when those things happen, it is very important to have two things. Like we talked about, we need to have an awareness of our actions, awareness of ourself, which comes over time. That's not something you're going to get overnight. But I mean, it doesn't take very long to develop. I don't think we're doing the next right thing, but we need to have other external voices who we actually trust to speak into our life. So for instance, I have friends in my life that I would take their advice, but I also know that their advice is probably going to be like an echo chamber, which I think you actually pointed that out.
Pause. What's an echo chamber? Yes. This is really, really important to differentiate because this is where discernment actually comes in.
So if I say something like, man, my job sucks. My boss sucks. They did this, and they're expecting me to do this. And they're like, you know what, man, you're right. They do suck. That's an echo chamber. When someone's like, have taken what you said and just feed it back into you. They're like, yeah, you're right. And then you feel really good because you're like, I know I'm right.
Yeah, they match your energy and they tell you generally what you want to hear because they're your friend. They like you, but they want to feed into this like, yeah, I like having this conversation with
Right.
you. So you're angry, so I'm gonna match your energy and then feed it back to you.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So that I would not trust those people to actually speak into my life. I'm glad I have an awareness of that now. It was you who brought that to my attention one time. And I was like, hey, you're kind of right, actually. And then I have a group of people in my life, very close friends. I have some family members that I actually would trust to speak into my life. If one of them was to come to me and say, man, I'm seeing this in you. I'm seeing this pattern of behavior. I'm seeing this thing. And I just want you to look at it. You know, I'm like, I'm a little bit concerned. That would resonate so deeply. That would mean something to me, even if I'm not aware of it at that point, because it's like I'm hearing that from a trusted source. And chances are I'm going to hear that from more than one. So when that external voice comes in and says you're inconsiderate, and those trusted voices are like, man, you're a good dude. You know, I see you. You really do care about people. You know, you're a nice guy. Then that's not going to resonate. That one voice that's saying I'm not, that I don't really respect much of their opinion. I guess I'll put it that way. It sounds kind of rude, but I mean, really, that's probably what it comes down to.
no, and it sounds rude. It's so necessary though.
Right.
Here, it is okay not to respect other people's opinions.
Mhm.
I will say that wholeheartedly. Now, you don't have to get it on top of them. You don't have to be, shout, scream, yell at them. But it's like somebody comes at you sideways, you have the absolute right to be like, your opinion literally means less than nothing to me. It
Right.
doesn't affect
I
my
probably
day.
wouldn't say that, but
Well, it doesn't affect my day. It doesn't, like, I will sleep like a young baby tonight.
Right.
Like, it is okay to get to that point with some things, because I certainly had people in my life that are like that when I cut them out, all of a sudden it's like a lot of my anxiety is gone, because this person that was constantly screaming, not screaming, but they were sowing these concepts of negativity and malice into my brain, into my spirit, in my soul. And those things were being repurposed inside of me and then spewing out into other people. And it wasn't until I started to recognize, like, whoa, like that's not even really my opinion. I'm just echoing an opinion of somebody that this person had told me. When I started recognizing that, and I was like, all right, I can't really hang out with you anymore. My relationship started to improve almost immediately. So
yeah, I want you to talk on this for a minute. So we talked about the importance of not taking, I guess, the opinion of people who don't have to speak in your life, I guess, who don't have that sort of stance in your life. But let's talk about the dangers of that. So if we're talking about someone in early recovery, which I mean is what this podcast, people in recovery in general, what are the dangers of not listening to outside people? Like we have those trusted group, but what's the dangers of just having that trusted group?
okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's positives and negatives to all things. Early recovery, the reality is they always want to say change people, places, and things. And that is right, because you are essentially cutting out the external voice that has been there, that is essentially perpetrated a lot of what you do. Because we are, if we're told long enough that we're stupid by enough people, then guess what we're going to think? We're stupid. If we're told we're ugly long enough, or angry, or fat, or whatever long enough, no good, dirty, rotten, rapscallion long enough, you're going to eventually believe it. So you have to cut those people out. Now, seeking trusted external voices, this is where things get hard. It's complicated. It is not something that can happen overnight, because there has been plenty enough people that I have had walk through my life on a journey of their own, that on paper, top shelf, above the surface, looked great, looked like I could trust them, looked like I could, really have conversations with them. Did a little bit of digging, started to press around a little bit, and all of a sudden it's like, nope, I can't have that person speak in my life. Why? Because they're having an affair. Can't let that person speak in my life. Why? Because they're covering up the fact that they had a child or with another woman or man. Can't let that person speak into my life. Why? Because they have recently, quit. They're quitting their job and they're using again, and they're doing this, that, and something else. So there is something to be said here. And here's the thing: it is somewhat of a religious principle. So for those of you who are listening right now, that is like, that sounds an awful lot like chapter verse. Insert chapter verse here. Yes, it is somewhat of a religious principle, but at the same time, it is a portion of wisdom that has been passed down throughout generations and generations and generations of believers and non-believers in any different faith alike. And it is simply this: what a person does and what a person says match Whatever they may not seem like they match, but they should match in your mind. You know, in our faith, we talk about you shall know a person by their fruit, or you should know a preacher or a prophet or a false prophet by their fruit. And really, what that is talking about is the ability to say this person has a tongue full of silver. They're able to speak in my life. They're able to do, you know, say things that I want to hear. And I'm cultivating that for myself because they're things that I want to hear, which that's the ultimate trick is when you find an echo chamber, guess what? That's not an external voice. That's an internal voice that, once again, echo chamber. You're saying something, your internal voice is just coming right back at you. That is what that is. But they're saying things that I want to hear. However, their entire life is in shambles. Their entire life is an absolute mess. They just lost their job. They just lost their house. They're lying to their spouse. They're doing things that they shouldn't be. They're going to the bar. Not that it's wrong going to the bar, but going to the bar when they say they're in recovery. There's a lot of things there that it's like, oh, yeah. That's where you have to be careful when cultivating that external voice.
I think a really simple example would be like if I was doing my job and smoking crack. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect example.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty straightforward. Like if I'm in recovery, air quotations. I guess I'm on a podcast. I don't know why I think you guys could see that. If I'm in,
I got the face for radio
recovery, and I'm smoking drugs. That's not, like the walk is not matching the talk. Very simple, but that plays out in every aspect, I think.
And and that is something that you have to cultivate that over time. Because there's so many times where we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and there's so many times where I have seen both sides of that coin. I've seen people give individuals benefit of the doubt only to get burned, because it's like you're giving them benefit of the doubt, but they're lying about how much time they're going to work, and instead they're they're going into work late, they're getting off early, they're doing these things. That's representative of something. That's representative of life. This is it's a old business parable, and I've heard it a dozen times. So that's why I know for a fact that it's like nobody knows the original retelling of this story, but it is something that is heard throughout. But I think it's important for this, which is essentially two men and a young woman go golfing. The young woman is the daughter of one of the young men, or one of the men. The other man is somebody that wants to get into business with him. So the two men go golfing and all this kind of stuff. And one of the guys hits it into kind of a water trap or whatever it might be. And the guy's daughter is kind of walking around, just trying to look for the ball. And she sees that guy pick up the ball and then drop it somewhere else. So he's cheating. He's moving it without telling anybody. And after it's all done, her father says, okay, I think I want to get into business with this guy. And the daughter says, you should not, because he did this. He's willing to cheat and lie and cheat his way through. And then, long story made short, months or a year or two down the line, the guy ends up getting indicted and ends up going, being federally prosecuted and stuff. I've heard it a dozen times, a dozen different ways. All of that to say, like, yes, people's actions actually show their motivations. Yes, people's actions show whether you should trust them or not. Because an individual, just because they're being nice to you and doing nice things for you, it's like, yeah, but they're cheating on their spouse. So it's like, I've left jobs because of that. I've left jobs because I found out that, my manager was stealing from the company. I've left jobs because I found out that, the two people that were married are now cheating on their respective spouses with each other. I've left jobs because it's like, I cannot work with people like that. Why? Because I can't trust them, because there's always this sense inside of me. But then there's the other flip of the coin, which is like, you want to trust them and you want to, say, okay, yes, I feel like this is okay. And then the person kind of screws up just a little bit, nothing big, but they maybe tell a white lie or something like that. And then you're like, nope, baby out with the bathwater. Nope. Yeah. Can't trust them. It's like, fine line.
Yeah. I would say the line's a lot less fine than what we would think it would be. I think if we're being realistic, we probably know where that line lies. Like there's a big difference between cheating on your wife or husband, whatever, cheating on your significant other versus telling a white lie, because none of us are perfect. I might let exaggeration, and I guess I'll call it that. So I don't.
Well, you are a fisherman, so
yeah, I know. The fish was like 27-inch bass. It was crazy.
Not in your life.
Actually, biggest fish. I'm not even going to get into it.
See? Yeah, exactly. He was about to lie to you.
No, I wasn't going to lie. I did catch a really big bass one time out of my pond. But anyways, so there's like, nobody's perfect, right? So we have to look at that sense. Like,
Buddy's nerfect.
What?
That's what I was always told by an older recovery.
Oh.
Said nobody's perfect. Buddy's nerfect. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that information. Thank you.
That's kind of how I felt when he said that. I'm like, what? Are you having a stroke?
No joke, man.
But yeah, I mean, it's like we're aware of people have flaws. No one's gonna be that knight in shining armor, that perfect person to speak into your life. There's nobody like that out there, especially not you. You know, so throwing out little shots.
Hi. Shots fired. Shots fired.
But it's a matter of like realizing that, right? So like there's little things and then there's big things. The line's pretty clear, I would say. There's some things that, like I said, I cannot reconcile with people. Like there's certain things people do that I'm gonna be like, no, I don't want you to be a part of my life. I don't need that in my life. Like, I mean, if one of my good friends in recovery relapsed, it's like, I'm sorry, you know, it's like, until you get straight.
And that's about protection too.
Right.
So,
until you have some clean time, I'm not going to be around you, you know, and that's a line. The other thing I want to say on this topic too, I think we're coming up in the end of our time, is the danger of necessarily ignoring, because I feel like I kind of portrayed this when I was talking, ignoring all outside voices that don't necessarily have a spot, an opinion in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is times like I had this guy, and he told me
it was me.
It wasn't you. So he told me something I really did not want to hear. And that was that I used my job as a peer recovery coach as an excuse and a weapon in my recovery long enough. And I was like, what'd you just say to me, bro? And like, at first it didn't resonate. It actually kind of was really against the grain. I'm like, I do not like what you just said. You know, I was like, why? Well, you don't, you know, like, who are you? But the more I thought about it, I actually it did resonate with me a little bit, because I use my peer recovery coaching. I talked about this a little bit. I used it as my recovery for a little while. Doesn't work. Terrible idea. And that was what he was talking about when he said an excuse. I talked to him about it later on. And when he was saying a weapon, is like, when we would talk about recovery, I might throw in like, you know, I learned in my peer recovery coach training, or I learned through this thing I'm teaching, which like is valid, but he had a good point. And it made me do some self-examination, and it came out to be true. And I was like, I need to dig a little deeper in my recovery. You know, I need to respect other people's opinions more that haven't gone through recovery coaching or haven't gone through schooling or anything like that, because they still have a valid opinion about recovery. And that kind of changes my aspect a little bit. There are people that I don't really have a spot to speak into my life, though when they say things, they sometimes deserve a little bit of thought. You know, they sometimes deserve a little bit of respect in that aspect. So
no, and I agree. I definitely, I think, you know, give wisdom its day, give wisdom, you know, where it's due. Because I have heard things before that, you know, it's like, it's an interesting perspective, and I think about it. I actually think about it, and I will let them know I do need to think about that. I need to have a deep thought about that. But I also, and maybe this is to my detriment, and I think sometimes it is and sometimes it's not, but I immediately go into, okay, character defect out the source. Who is the source? What do I know about the source? What do I not know about this source? Have I ever heard, you know, this person before? And I will go and approach close, you know, people that I trust to speak into my life. What do you know about this person? What do you think? How should they've said something to me and I'm processing it, but I need to know, does it come from a good source? And sometimes that's not good. Sometimes that's much to my detriment. Other times it's saved my rear end, because people have said things and then I go and say, what do you think about that to another person? They say, don't trust them. Don't.
I think you're talking about more external things, right? Like,
yes.
More like, yeah, because like policies and things like that is kind of what you're talking about.
Well, not only policies, but things that people have said into my life, like that do somewhat resonate. I mean, we had a conversation before this started about an individual who said, you know, maybe I need to reanalyze my humility. Do I need to start looking more at my humility? And here's the difficulty with that. I think we should always be striving to look more at our humility. Yes. Also, I think that is the person that's saying that, are they saying it as a weapon? Mm-hmm. Are they saying it to throw an arrow? Are they saying it because they want to try to make something hurt? Mm-hmm. Because that's what it came off as. And when it came off as that, immediately, you know, unlike I think some people, and I know especially for you, although I'm training you wisely in the ways of the dark side of, I have that switch in my head that when somebody says that and they're trying to throw an arrow, immediately I hit the switch and it's like, okay, we're just going to look at this analytically. It has nothing to do with emotion. And like, I don't care what you feel. I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't like, and that's dangerous because sometimes when I do that, I can get myself in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
So in that particular instance, I think just like you were depicting, I did have a moment of like, does this resonate? Is it resonating? Do I need to think more about this? How do I need to think about this? So
yeah, and I think that's crucial to do. No matter what it is said, it's like if it, or who said it, I guess, but like if it resonates all day long, you know. If there's something that's said that actually like sticks to you and says like, man, there is a problem here, do not ignore that, because I can find people in, like I said, echo chambers. I can find people in my life that can say, no, they're wrong, you know, or no, they're not right. But if internally I'm like, I know that's true, I know what they're saying is true, and I know it's a problem, I need to focus on that thing, you know. So there's a really, really big importance into listening to those outside voices at certain times. I guess outside of this trusted group, I keep saying outside voices, but I mean, I just mean like the people outside of the trusted people you trust to speak into your life. So,
yeah. And I do think that sometimes it's a pathway that needs to be navigated, because guess what? I still think I got it together sometimes, and I certainly don't. I still think, you know, I got these trusted people around me. As long as I listen to them, I'm going to be able to go the right path. I don't like, and it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle. But with that being said, man, let's wrap it up. Thanks so much for listening. For those of you who listen, this wraps up Wednesday's meditation. Mondays, we do our science of addiction. Over the last couple of Mondays, we've been doing brain chemistry stuff. However, I believe starting this next Monday, we're going to do a 2-part series on motivational interviewing. And then get ready, because going into next month, we got the ACEs training, which is going to be so cool. It stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. That's going to be done with Dr. Bob Powell from Family Children's Service Aid. He is kind of one of the leading he is one of the leading trauma specialized therapists in the state of Michigan. Cool guy. So we're so excited for him. But Mondays we do science, Wednesdays we do meditations, and then Friday we interview. With that being said, thanks.